Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. My name is Dwight Carter, Director of Student Support Systems for the Eastland-Fairfield Career and Technical School District. Welcome to our fifth and final community conversation for the 23-24 school year. We are blessed to have a very special guest with us here today. She affectionately goes by Dr. Cam. Dr. Cam received her doctorate in developmental psychology from George Mason University. She is an author, a podcaster, TEDx speaker. She's affectionately also called the Teen Whisperer, and she walks the talk because she also is a mom. So we're blessed and honored to have Dr. Cam. So Dr. Cam,
What is it?
Thank you, Dwight, and thank you, Sarah, for jumping on. And the whole topic about today, and Sarah, I'm gonna give you some power today too. The whole topic that we're covering today, and Dwight, you're a dad too, so this is for you as well. Is really about what's going on with our teens. So
Okay.
I really want to be able to explain, and we've got more people. So I really want to explain and walk through what the brain development, and kind of explain what's going on. So I'm going to start with that. And then if you guys have any specific questions, even specific to your situation and your kids, please feel free to just jump in and ask, because that is the privilege you guys get for being here. The other people get to listen in. All right. So I'm going to
have my husband here with me. So.
Oh, good. Okay. Hello, husband. So
Hello.
I'm going to share my screen. 1 second. I never can find my little share thing as soon as I do that. Oh, it's showing right there. Okay. Let me see if this is the right one. That is not the right one. Okay. Why did that not share? Oh, here it is. All right. You guys see that? Okay. So this is called Decoding Adolescence, and it's the 4 reasons teens break down. And I do this because I'm going to compare teens to a car. I do this because I want to help you guys remember what is going on, because we can get very emotional and reactive and fearful and all kinds of stuff when it comes to our teens. I know this because I am a mom of a teen and I get all of those things. But the first thing I hear all the time, and I don't know if you've ever said this or you've heard this, is what's up with teens these days? Anybody say that? Like, what is their deal? What is going on? And just questioning, kind of, a lot of times it's, attitude. Sometimes they're always on their phone, their expectations, a lot of this. I always laugh when I hear this, because people were asking the same thing when we were kids. What's with these teens? And I love that we think, oh my gosh, these kids these days are just too much. But every single generation, the parents have always thought that the teens are way too much and they worry about a lot. And the reason I want to bring this up is I want to put a lot of this in perspective, because when we see a generation that's so different from ours, because the life and this in the world that they live in is so different from ours, it sparks a lot of fear in us, because we don't know this, and this must not be good. I remember when I was growing up, it was television. Like, that was the evil. Don't watch too much TV. Now, of course, it's social media. And I get the fears of that, because it's like the Wild West. But we also have to understand that we as parents need to start learning and adapting to their world, rather than saying, we didn't have that, we were okay, or these are the things that we expected when we were kids, and that's what we expect now. And we just can't do that, because every single generation has different expectations on them. With that said, I want you guys to think about, what are the challenging behaviors that are showing up for you at home or in school right now? And if you guys want to share, either take your mics off and say it or put it in the chat. But what are some of the things that even brought you to show up today? What are the things that are concerning you? Anything? There we go. Social media and drama, very big ones. Absolutely big ones. And they kind of go together, don't they? It's all one and the same. Here's what I hear a lot. that I hear, and tech addiction is on there, the drama, lack of respect, yes. Disrespect is on there, as you can see, mental health concerns. All of these I hear quite frequently. And I have a practice where I work with parents and teens individually in a private practice, and I do group. And I hear parents really worried about a lot of this. A lot of it has to do with school. A lot of it has to do with their attitude and how they respond to us. A lot social relationships, very, very big one. Very big one. We're going to address that. So as parents, we see these things and we go, oh my gosh, if they can't address this now, how are they ever going to be able to address it? And we get very worried on the impact because we see things like girl drama and risky behaviors and tech addiction. And we worry that it's going to lead to the anxiety and the depression and the self-harm, because it can. And we end up feeling like our buttons are getting pushed. We get in that reactive fear state. And I get it, because our job as parents is to protect our kids. That is our job, our only thing. And when we see these things, we go, oh my gosh, how do I protect them from this? I don't know how. And so we do whatever we can think of. We do whatever comes to mind. The problem is, because we don't know how to respond to this, and because it's so emotional and fear-based, we get stuck in a reactive mode. We wait until something happens and then we react. And usually when we're reacting, we are in that fight or flight mode, and our kids are in that fight or flight mode. And often, I don't know about you guys, but when I work with my clients, it doesn't go well. It ends up being a lot of this, and a lot more fear, and a lot more fighting, and a lot more disrespect, and everything else, because we are in reactive mode. When we are, what we're missing, and I have the privilege actually of talking, I've talked to hundreds of teens at very deep levels because I'm not their parent. So they will tell me a lot. And here's what I hear from them. They're feeling overwhelmed, anxious, undervalued, bored, targeted, frustrated, defensive, self-conscious, pressured. This is what is building up inside of them. These are the things that they're trying to express to us. And the biggest thing that I tell people, this is foundational to everything I do. Behavior is a symptom, not the problem. I'm going to repeat that again. Behavior is a symptom, not the problem. When we're reacting, what are we reacting to? The behavior. We're saying, I don't like that disrespectful behavior. I'm going to shut that down. I don't like the fact that they're always on tech. I'm going to shut that down. I don't like this. I'm going to stop this. And what happens? I call this whack-a-mole parenting, because when we do it that way, what happens? The behavior just pops up somewhere else or in a different format, but it keeps popping up. And we're like, oh my gosh, how many times do I have to keep doing this? But it's because we're not addressing. Here's where we're going to start the car analogy, and we're going to do this throughout. I don't know about you guys, but I do not like taking my car to the auto mechanic because I just feel like it's going to take forever, and it usually does. So when my check engine light comes on, I usually ignore it for a while. But when I finally take it in, what do I ask the technician when I go in? Anybody, what would I ask the technician if my check engine light came on? What would you ask?
What's going on
With what?
with the engine?
With the engine. Do I go in and say, what's going on with the light on my dashboard? I mean, that's what came on, and I want that to go off. But I'm not asking them to turn the light off, because if they did that, it would come right back on. This is what we're doing with behavior. We're turning the light off on our dashboard that's warning us that something's going on, rather than checking the engine to see what is actually going on. Does that make sense? And that's why it keeps coming right back, because we're not addressing it. So I'm going to tell you, this is based off of my experience. I've kind of summed it up and grouped it into 4 key reasons that I keep seeing over and over again when teens are breaking down. And the reason that this is useful is because we said teens today, right? And then I showed you the picture of when we were kids, or at least when I was a kid. Our brains are exactly the same. So the stages we're going through and the needs that we have and the way we view the world has not changed. The world has. So I'm going to show you first what's going on with the teen brain, right? Physically, neurologically, and then I'm going to show you a little glimpse of how this new culture is impacting that brain and why this can explain some of the behaviors. So the first one is week breaks. And I'm sure by now you have all heard about the developing brain and the fact that the brain doesn't develop. But let's go really quickly. And I want to give you a little bit more insight because I actually I've talked to several neurologists about this because I really wanted to understand what this meant. We hear all the time, by 11 years old, our amygdala, the emotion center of our brain, which is the back of our brain, is fully developed. When they say that, that means all these connections have been formed and it's dense. And we have all the connections to the emotions. This means that our kids are being driven by emotion. I'm going to stop right there because you're probably going, that explains so much. Their decisions, everything, their actions, emotion driven, because the upper part, our brain develops, those connections develop unevenly and they end in the front. By 25, and this is the thing I want to clarify because I got this wrong for a long time. By 25, the brain stops going through this growth spurt. And a lot of times, and what I misunderstood was I thought not until 25 are a lot of these skills established because their brain hasn't developed this yet. The truth is, our brain right now, during their brain right now, is going through a growth spurt and building all of these connections right now. At age 25, that growth spurt stops. So it's really a window of opportunity to teach kids these skills. And the reason this is so important is because when we misunderstand that and we think, oh my gosh, I need to do it for them and make decisions for them because they can't do it until they're 25. What happens is we miss the window of opportunity when they're developing that if we do it for them. And by the time they're 25 and we're letting them do it for themselves, their brain growth isn't there anymore, and it's going to be harder for them to learn it. So it's very important to remember that this is the age they do not have the skills, but they are primed to learn the skills right now. So we need to give them as many opportunities to do the things like problem solving, emotional regulation, decision making, the things we're terrified to let them do because they're terrible at it. They're not going to get good at it until they do it a lot, which means making a lot of mistakes. It's a scary, scary thing for parents. I have seen people that have done all of those things for their kids until they're like, I just want to get them to college. I don't care. I'm going to make sure they're up every morning. I'm going to make sure they're doing their homework. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to stay on top of them and all these things. And they send them off to college. And guess what those kids don't have? The ability to get themselves up in the morning, the ability to organize their homework, the ability to stay on task because they've never developed the skills. That was a very big aha moment for me that I want to make sure I share to you because that changes the entire way we approach adolescence. But I'm also going to tell you when we're in that emotion state and we add our own emotions to the situation by getting upset, what happens is we're adding fuel because the week breaks means their emotions are leading, their emotional regulation is not very good, which means it takes a lot of effort for them to slow down their emotions. And if we add more emotions, we're basically saying, stop that behavior while we're pushing on the gas. That's why it doesn't work well. So we've got to what? We've got to be calm. So and we're going to get to that. I want to show you now, in addition to this, that's basic brain behavior, right? Week breaks takes us a while to calm down because that part of our brain is not developing. We're developing yet. We're going to add to that the cultural dynamic. It is shown that it takes centuries for human brain to evolve. That means our human brain still pretty much works like it did when we were cavemen. And we know this because fight or flight still exists the same way. We still respond to stress the same way our ancestors did when they were being chased by tigers. That hasn't changed yet. What has changed is over the past few decades, there has been an explosive technology and evolution. It used to be 100 years before one big invention would come. Life would be exactly the same for hundreds of years. Now life isn't even what it was yesterday because something else. I mean, AI came, I don't even remember. Now it's like everywhere, so fast. So now we've got the same brain that has the same weak breaks, but we've got all of this now powering down, which is why they're having harder time than we did. So it is unfair to ever compare how we were as a kid to how our kids were, because we didn't have any of this going on with a brain that was not prepared to handle this. Right? More distractions, more stuff, more information, I'm only saying this because we want to put this into perspective on why our kids are acting this way. They're struggling.
And Dr. Kim, we as
Yes.
adults are experiencing those same things.
Dwight, 1,000% we are.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
and this is why it's hard for us parents, because we're under so much stress.
Yeah.
So responding to our kids, and I think this is the other thing to really put into perspective, because I've heard parents say, well, I stay calm, but it's my kids that make me upset and then I lose it. And my response to that is, if we lose it, that is the exact same thing our kids are doing. Because we often are pushing their buttons way before they are pushing ours, and their ability to regulate that is much smaller than ours. So if we lose it with our kids for losing it, we're giving a very mixed message right there, right? We're not demonstrating, we're demonstrating when you get pushed, you lose it. So we really want to consider that. Here's how this shows up at home. These weak breaks, they become argumentative, disorganized, meltdowns, easily distracted, reactive, restless. Any of these, all of these, right? We see a lot of these. And this is really their brain just not being able to process as quickly as we are, because those connections have not formed yet. So here's what we do. We have to stay calm. I'm laughing. Yeah, so easy, right? Not at all. This is the craziest thing. But the other point is, it's not easy for us to do. And guess who has the fully developed prefrontal cortex with all those connections to regulate? We do. So if we're struggling to stay calm, there's no way our kids are going to stay calm in a moment. So what we need to do is learn to regulate our emotions. It is not easy. But if we want our kids to learn to regulate their emotions, we have to learn how to do it first. This is difficult. Here's one of my tricks that I use personally with my daughter. When she gets heightened and her emotions get heightened and upset, I can immediately feel myself and my heart rate going, right? And what I end up doing is I regulate by going completely opposite of her energy. So the more heightened and louder she gets, the slower and quieter I get. The slower and quieter my voice gets. We also know that a slow, low voice is very calming and soothing and helps slow our heart rate and slow their heart rate. When we move slowly, we're telling our heart it's okay, and we're calming ourselves down and we're calming them down. What we are not doing is adding fuel to the fire. They're going to still go through that emotion, but when we're not adding to it, they're going to go through it faster, and they're watching us and they're learning how to regulate their emotions. Again, not easy, but with practice, you can do it. If I can do it, anyone can do it, because I have heightened emotions. I'm a very, very emotional person. So this takes a lot of practice, but it's extraordinarily effective. The second thing is an empty take. And we've heard this, that teens obviously need a full tank to run smoothly. What do I mean by a full tank? Well, teens need to feel accepted, belonging, loved. They need to feel filled up. They need to feel good about themselves. They need to feel that you feel good about them. things like listening and empathizing and validating, things that we sometimes aren't able to do. And the reason we aren't able to do this a lot is because it's very hard to listen and empathize and validate with a kid that we feel is being really disrespectful and rude. We really struggle to be encouraging with somebody that's mad and angry, right? That's what hurts this. So here's one of the things I want you guys to think about. The emotions, again, the behavior you see on the outside is a symptom, remember? When kids are disrespectful and rude and angry, that behavior triggers us and we think one thing. But what I have learned is that behavior often is a symptom of the same sort of behavior and feelings that kids have who are crying and sad and self-harming. Now, when kids are sad and crying, it's far easier for us to empathize, isn't it? We feel for them. When they're being argumentative, we don't, but the same issue is in the inside. That kid is still crying out that I'm hurting, because nobody acts that way when they feel good. They just don't. So the thing we want to do is we want to get to the point of understanding what's going on. Here are the things that guzzle, that drain them. When we yell, when we nag, when we scold, when we lecture, when we criticize, when we blame, when we all of these, which we all do. I do. We all do these. They come from a good intention, or they come from fear. But the more we do these, the more we're draining our kids' battery and, frankly, their trust in us, in our connection. And so the more we do this, the less motivated they get. Nagging. I understand why we do. Man, it's so hard not to do. I catch myself doing it all the time. But every single time we do, we're not motivating, we're demotivating. Because motivation's internal. And the more we do that, the more they resist it. Here's the thing I want you guys to consider. And this is, it's some is 5, some is 4, but there's this 4-to-1 rule that we need to give 4 positives for every negative. Dwight, I know you've heard this. I have no doubt. Here's the science behind that. The brain is really cued in to negative feedback. It's something that is just evolutionary. I mean, the people that were looking for danger are the ones that survived, right? So our brain is cued into negative. It's more salient too. We remember the negative because it triggers these emotions in us that are really they just stick with us. The positives, we don't hear them all the time. We just don't. The positives, and sometimes they don't jive with our belief system. The negatives do. If we don't believe or have a lot of self-esteem, we'll hold on to those negatives because they're evidence to prove what we believe. The positives, not so much. So we need to counter this. And what I see a lot during adolescence is it's not even the reverse. It's like double reverse. We get a lot of negatives. We're doing a lot. We're nagging, we're lecturing, we're trying to fix. But we get stuck in these negative modes, and suddenly the kids are coming to me going, I can't do anything right. I don't even care anymore. I don't want to try, I don't know anything. And they get so frustrated because all they hear from us, even though we're giving them positives, if the negatives are outweighing, if they're even equal to, all they hear is the negatives. Then we're going to pile on the current climate. One of the things I think that is actually extraordinary positive about social media, yes, I just said positive about social media in the same sentence, is the fact that it is giving kids a place to have a voice, to be heard, and find people that understand and hear them. The dangers for us parents is that kids now have a voice and know what it feels like to have a voice. And we didn't have one growing up. We weren't able to go out there and say, people don't understand me. We just thought it was us. And now people are going out there going, wait, you're not understood either. Wait, you feel this way too, and people don't get it. And this is why there's what we see is a lot of kids, and it's kind of a rebellion. It is a rebellion, but it's a rebellion not based off of I disrespect you. It's rebellion based off of I believe we deserve more respect that we're not getting. I don't know how to communicate that well because I'm still learning. And so I'm communicating it in a pretty not very kind way, which adults do too. But the whole point is I'm trying to make a point that I don't feel heard. And if you don't hear me, and I've tried to say it kindly over and over again, and you don't hear me, then I'm going to say it in a not very kind way. And this is what I'm hearing a lot of kids say. I'm just trying to be heard. And we hear it as disrespect. We shut it down because we don't like the tone, and we miss the message. We confirm exactly what they're upset about. They're upset because we're not listening, and we just shut them down again. So what we want to do, because it's through this time of this period of time where they're learning how, is not shut the message down. It's to teach them how to communicate that message in a more effective way. That's what we want to do. So this is where we need to stop again and go, wait a second. This is my teen trying to say something, and often it's my tank is very empty right now, and I need to be heard because I'm trying to express what my needs are. Okay, this is how it often shows up, this low battery: angry, anxious, apathetic. Do you hear the I don't cares? Those I don't cares means I care a whole lot and I gave up. That's what those mean. They care a lot, believe me. Avoidant, I'm just going to hide in my room. I just had a session with a parent today, and she's like, my son will not come out of the room. Something's up with my son. And I said, I think the question is, why doesn't your son feel comfortable coming out of his room? That's the question to ask, because kids will come out of their room if they're comfortable and feel like they belong. Again, I am not saying that we're doing this intentionally, because we are not. But we have to be really aware and really cognizant of our kids' behaviors and how we're responding to them, because we may be shutting down or responding in a way based on our emotions and what we believe it is without really understanding what it is. And when we do that enough, they're going to just avoid us. If they know that if they go out there and we're going to ask them questions and start getting into a nagging or a lecturing or something where it's going to be negative, they're just going to avoid us. This is hard to hear sometimes, but man, I've worked with parents that have changed this dynamic, and it is magical, because I've yet to meet a kid that doesn't want a better relationship with their parent. No lie. So we need to fill their tank. And here is the best way to fill their tank is to listen. Listen is not the same as hearing. Listening is paying attention and trying to understand what they are saying in their perspective. So if you are listening with the intention of figuring out when you get to speak, if you are listening while you are forming a response or a solution in your head, you are not listening. You're just not. And I don't think this is fair, because listening is one of the most important skills we need as a parent. I think it's the number one skill we need. And we're not taught to listen. Can you add this to the school system with reading, writing, and arithmetic? Where's the listening? We need to do this. We don't listen to anybody. Everyone wants to be heard. No one listens. That's why we're all so desperate to be heard, right? So listening, we've got to just pay attention and be curious. What are we doing this? Yes, Covey, listen to understand, not to respond. 1000%. I love that. That is exactly it. So then the next thing. So now we are staying calm and we are listening. This takes practice and time and intention. It's not easy. Now we're going to look at low battery. And this is a big one that I think we misinterpret a lot. To do any undesirable task, homework, chores, our kids need a fully charged battery. They need to have the energy and motivation to do this, right? And here's what they're struggling with. Their level of dopamine, which is really that spurt that gives us that motivation, that feel good, that reward chemical, their baseline level of dopamine is lower than adults. And their need for the amount of dopamine they need to feel motivated and get that feel good is greater. So they need a lot more of that positive stimulation than even we do to feel motivated. And they're getting a lot less. They're like getting none, right? If they're struggling to do homework because their battery is low and we're nagging them about homework, we're just draining it even more, aren't we? So this is where it gets really difficult for them because now we're making it more difficult and we're trying to help, but we're not. So here's some of the drainers: academic pressure, their body image, boredom in general, our expectations. I mean, this list is huge, right? All of this stuff is draining. When our kids come home from school, and this is a common one I hear, I ask my kid how their day was and I get a fine. And it drives us nuts. We're trying to connect. We just want to know what's going on. Here's what I hear, why that fine, they get it. First of all, that is exactly the answer. It was fine. What more do you want? They're giving you the flat out answer. The shoulder shrug and eye roll is often because I am exhausted and I have no desire to talk about this right now. So I gave you my answer because I respect you enough to give you something, but I really don't want to say anything because I don't want to even give you anything to start a conversation because I don't have it in me to have a conversation. So I know and I understand how hurtful and just frustrating that response is, but I also want to speak up for your teen on why that's happening. And when we recognize that, and we can even be like, I'm guessing I noticed that you seem tired. Let's have your space. I'm here. I would love to hear if you have the time. When we respect that space and we give them and we recognize that, sometimes they'll even be like, I didn't mean that. I mean this. Like they don't even realize they're doing it, right? They just don't even know. They're just tired. Here's what fills them up. Here's what they need. They need to feel belonging. They need empathy. They need sleep and naps and social interactions, which often is on their phone. They need exercise. And I know this is a bane of a lot of parents' existence. Like, I wish they would exercise more and it would feel good. They need free time. They need to laugh. They need novelty. They need all of these things that make them feel great about themselves and make them feel like, I can do this. Even just saying, I know you can do this. I believe in you. That's it. Just knowing that you believe in them is a big one. Then let's add the current climate to the low battery. Here's traditional pressures of adolescence. We've seen this in textbooks for decades, right? Identity formation, peer pressure, body image, academic, all of those have been in existence forever. Now we're going to add today. We also have a far more competitive academic culture, do we not? Because now it's not just kids comparing, it's parents comparing, going, I saw that so-and-so posted on their social media that their kid is doing this. I believe, honestly, you can write this down. I believe social media has a more negative impact and pressure on us that goes down to our kids than on our kids itself, because we feel pressured to make sure our kids are doing something. I've seen this a lot. 24/7 connectivity. I know we're trying to prevent that. I get that. The problem is, even when we don't get that, the FOMO's there. So now they're just stressed out even more because they don't know what's going on and they're missing something. So phone or not, that's not going away. We do have the social media and the online influences. I'm not arguing that. There's a lot going on there that we need to really be proactive about and understand. We've got the cyberbullying. Man, we used to be bullied at school. Now we're bullied 24/7 and for the world to see. That is horrific. It's constant. And so now we have all of this basic, everyday, whatever, adolescent stuff that we used to make a big deal out of. And that's like nothing compared to all this now that they're dealing with. It's no wonder. The other thing is that, and this is a study, but I hear this too, is that they feel more pressured. They get more pressure about their grades than they do about fitting in or looking okay. That was ours. Ours was like, now it's about grades. They report that school stress is the #1 point of stress for them. Not a lot of this other stuff that we're trying to like remove for fear of stress. While we're piling on, not often aware or with good intentions, the school stress.
Hey, Dr. Kim, is that when you say school stress, are you referring to like the academic stress or the
Yes.
school
The
culture,
grades.
school environment, grades? Okay.
It's the grades. It's the grades. It's the expectations. It's the tests. It's all of that. There's so much expectation now on what those are. And one of the worst inventions, I believe, today is the ability for parents to look at kids' grades real time. I think if we removed that, there would be so much anxiety and stress removed from this world. I have never seen it work in favor of anyone, ever. It's terrible, because what happens is we take ownership of their grades, but we don't have ownership of their grades. It's their grades. When we take ownership, we remove any sort of accountability, of motivation, of a sense of accomplishment. We then feel the pressure. We start nagging on them about things that they have taken care of. So this is something that I feel very strongly about, and I know it's probably not a favorable opinion to a lot of people, but I really wish that we let our kids figure this out, because this pressure to constantly, and one thing I've heard a lot is that teachers are under a lot of pressure to get grades in right away because parents are calling them. They don't. So we see grades real time that aren't real grades. And all of a sudden we're freaking out when the grade, and I do this, I've learned this with my daughter. I'm just like, hey, I saw this. Can you just give me a heads up with, what's going on? Let me know. And they're like, oh, well, I've got 2 projects that I'm still waiting to be graded. Well, that would explain that grade. Easy as that. So this is something, if you can, just don't, we can still talk about, but don't. Anyway, it's hard. It's a hard one when that information's there. But here's how this shows up. How am I doing on time too? Because Dwight, I can go. They're forgetful. Good. Okay. Forgetful, inattentive, irresponsible, irritable. Their grades start dropping. This is because in order for them to do well in school, in order for them to do well and make good choices, they need to feel internally motivated, which means they need to feel ownership for it. They also need room to fail at it, because we're learning how. And if there's fear of failure, because they get in trouble if they fail, or we jump in and panic if they fail, or we go fix it if they fail. Now, a lot of kids, and this especially I saw a lot with kids who once got straight A's who are now struggling with their grades, is because they're terrified of failing. They would rather you call them lazy than stupid. And that basically to them is the 2 options they've got, because that's what we often people will label them as. So we've got to understand that if we see laziness and we see poor grades, we need to understand why. This is the behavior. These are the warning signs that something's going on. This is our sign to look at the engine, what's going on. Okay. Yeah, the letting them fail is a really difficult thing. And here's what I tell people. At some point in our lives, we're going to fail. We are. I personally would rather my child fail now and learn how to recover from failure while I'm there cheering her on and letting her know she can do it, and it's not life-threatening or the end of the world, than when she gets into college or in her job or in the real world. I want her to do it now. And she has. So do I. We do, and we get through it and we figure it out, right? They're going to. We got to let them. Yes, parents off, and this is, Dwight, this is one of the theories of why I think social media is actually impacting us so much, is because we have this, our kids are a reflection of us, whether we want them to be or not, because they are a measure of how good we are as a parent. That is an unfair pressure to put on our kids because now we have certain expectations of how we want to appear as a parent, which may not be anything relevant to who our kid is and what our kid needs from us. And so when we do that, our focus moves away from becoming the best parent for our child and helping our child shine for who they are and trying to mold them and push them and make them become the kid that we need them to be to feel good. We don't do this intentionally at all. It takes a lot of self-reflection to realize that we're doing this, but we all do it at some level without question. And I get it because we take a lot of pride in ourselves as being parents. I think what's hard is we then, when we do that, we start putting the value of our kids and valuing our kids for their achievements that we can promote on social media and we can brag about, not who our kids are. Not their kindness, not their compassion, not their passions. We start looking at what have they done that makes us look good. And this is hard because then our kids go, oh, my value is in my accomplishments. And now we go, oh my gosh, I'm not as smart as I thought to be. And my value is in being smart and getting A's. So now I'm just giving up because I must not be valuable anymore. Like this is heavy stuff, but this is going on. I'm going to challenge you to prioritize downtime. There is this belief in our society now that if we're not being productive, we're being lazy. This is hard for me. And I grew up the same way. If you sit down, I have a guilt. If I sit down for a second, and I do now, but I've gotten over the guilt. But if I sit down and someone comes in the room, I automatically pretend that I'm doing something because God forbid they catch me watching my third episode of Housewives. Like I can't we all do it. So letting our kids prioritize just doing nothing. So many kids tell me they just want to be able to do nothing. They're so tired. Yeah. So we just want, you feel attacked. Are you one of those people? Always do. That's exhausting to always do. And it undermines the importance of self-care that we're constantly telling adults. There's so many adults out there going, oh my gosh, I need to learn self-care. I can't do. That's because we were told that taking time for ourselves is bad, and it's not. It's so when we don't allow ourselves to do it, or we think it's bad, we are now telling our kids it's bad to take care of themselves. And that's not a great place to be. So I just want to show that. Okay, one more, unclear directions. We're going to go through this fast. I basically liken this to if you're driving down the street and the police pulls you over and you have no idea, and they basically say, well, today I decided that speed was not a good speed, so I'm pulling you over. This is how kids feel about our rules. And our, right, they kind of are all over the place. We define them. We know when they're broken after they've been broken. And so we will give like direction and explanation to our kids. And these are the things. That behavior is unacceptable. You can't talk to me that way. I expect more from you. You should know better. Have you said any of these? This gives them no information whatsoever. This is making very, very big assumptions that they can figure out and translate exactly what you're talking about. And they cannot, because most of them don't even see a problem with their behavior because their behavior is fulfilling their needs. You should know better is the hardest thing for me to hear, because if they didn't do it, then they don't know better, and should is such a pile of shame. That's just saying, right? It is a lot. So I'm going to tell you right now, and I think if you think about this, you'll agree with me. Teens don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to disappoint you. They don't want to fail. They don't want to look stupid. They don't want to embarrass themselves. So if they're doing things that cause any of these, they're not doing it to do this. There's a reason why they're doing it. And usually it is the best solution or best response that they could come up with in the moment with the information and the emotion. Now we're going to add to this. And this is one thing I don't feel is talked about enough. We talk about kids being behind in school, but we forget that for 2 years, kids that were developing those connections to learn how to socialize, which is a skill, didn't have the opportunity to develop those skills. Then they're going back into school with the expectation to have that level of social development and skills intact when they don't, because they didn't develop them. So we've got to understand and realize that our kids aren't just, they need some catch up. And this is where a lot of the social anxiety is coming from right now. They got thrown into a much more advanced social world and didn't have the chance to build up to that. And now it's just like these kids that went from like 6th grade to junior to like, or the kids that went into high school, the kids that went into 6th to middle school, like they don't know how to handle this. So we've got to step back and help them build this up slower and understand. And that's that. So when they don't know what to expect from us and they're confused, or there's expectations put on them and they don't know how to meet them, they will say, I don't care. They will say, this is so stupid. This is stupid. This is stupid means I'm scared of failing this. I'm scared of looking stupid. They'll be disrespectful because they feel like I need to push back because you're making me uncomfortable and I don't feel heard. So now I'm pushing back. And that sounds like their best attempts to self-advocate often sound like disrespect to us. So it's not about disrespect. It's about communication and their ability to communicate their needs, not an attack on us. And if they get snippy with us particularly, to me, that's a sign that we need to improve how we hear them and validate them. We're missing something, and we may be doing everything we can to hear, but there's still something we're missing. And it may be that they're not communicating well, probably aren't. But we want to kind of dive into that a little bit. Okay, I want to keep going. So I'm not going to go into this. It's providing clear goals. It's being really clear on what is it specifically. And what I love to do is just say, you know, my guideposts are like, is it kind? Is it, you know, what are their goals? What are something they're trying to achieve? But saying, is it the right thing is a very confusing thing. Saying, is it the kind thing to do? Say it is the accountable thing to do, right? Being a little bit clearer on where your goals are and what your values are helps a lot. Okay, that's that. This is the key takeaway, and then I'm done. Teenagers are doing their very best to cope in a world where their brains are not well equipped to function effectively. And by the way, so are we. Dwight, you pointed that out as well. We're trying really hard. So none of this is about you aren't doing well enough, because you guys are doing amazing with all the resources and all the energy you have. This is to give you some explanation about what's going on so that now you can be more thoughtful on how you approach it so that we don't get stuck in cycles. And I just want to let you know really quickly, if you want support, continued support, I have a community, thrivingparent.org. I won't spend time on it, but if you want to check it out, this is where I give you guidance on a weekly basis to help you through this, because you don't have to do it alone. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing.
Dr. Kim, can you share some of your other resources? Like, I love the community you just shared, like some of your books or anything like that.
Yeah, so I have this book. Let me go grab real quick. So I've got this book, Improving School Mental Health, that I wrote with Charlie Peck, who is a school teacher. And we joined forces because she was in the school, saw a lot of mental health issues. I'm at home working with the teens, and the parents saw a lot of mental health issues. And our belief is that schools and parents need to work together. And I think this is a really challenge. What we did is we looked at 9 different core reasons why we thought that the solutions today weren't working, and we came up with a solution and a skill to address each one. Super simple skills that we teach. So that's the first one. The other one is my podcast. If you Google or look for Parenting Teens with Dr. Cam, I talk to 2 experts a week, phenomenal experts, neurologists and people that specialize in social anxiety, people that specialize in social media. And I get to ask them questions, and I learn a lot from those. And I have been told that a lot of parents really learn a lot from those. So it's really trying to give you answers to a lot of the problems, but asking the experts what they are. So those are my 2 big ones.
Fantastic. I've read the book, and it is phenomenal. We have a couple copies throughout the district, so hopefully we can get that into the hands of more people.
Yeah. Love that.
Sarah or Kendra, do you have any questions for Dr. Cam?
Nope. That's all
Nope.
right.
Yeah, Dr. Cam, you have any closing remarks? Any
Thank you,
final
Kendra.
statement?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is what we know now, because of science, because of research, because of everything that our parents didn't know when we were growing up. So I think a lot of this is we parent based on what we know. And I believe with all my heart, our parents did the very best they could with what was known then. The difference is we know more now. And so I think for us as parents, we get to learn to do something even better than they did. And that's what's so amazingly cool. So we know and we do everything from the right attention the best we can. But because there's information out there, I think it's really cool that we can always learn. If we're struggling with something, we can always learn a new way to address it that can hopefully change the direction for us and our kids.
Great point. Can you repeat your website again?
Yeah, the podcast.
Both the
Oh,
website.
so
and
my website, that was thrivingparent.org. It's just one parent because parents was taken. So it's thrivingparent.org. Yeah. And my podcast is Parenting Teens with Dr. Cam. And I've
Gotcha.
got I just did my 200th episode.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
I just put those in the chat. So that'll be there for people to access
Okay.
at a later date.
If you guys are on Instagram, I know social media, but if you're on Instagram, I'm at Dr. Cam Caswell. I post like 2 things a day of tips and solutions and everything else. So if you are in Instagram, at Dr. Cam Caswell.
At Dr. Cam. Is it DRP?
CASWELL. Yep.
All right. Put that in the chat as well.
Perfect.
Is that correct?
That's the one. That's
Awesome.
me.
Well, Dr. Cam, cannot thank you enough for your time, your expertise, your warmth. Thank you for sharing so much powerful information, and I took a lot of notes from that. We'll have a discussion about that at home, and I'll definitely share this with my staff at Eastland-Fairfield. So thank you so much.
You're so very welcome. Thank you guys for jumping on.